Hello. So I decided that I would make a video to talk about why I'm on dialysis now. Um, like a full video so you can kind of know the details of where I've been for 2 weeks at the hospital. So we could start with the fact that I've had pneumonia last year around November. And so I went to the George Dumont because I had trouble sleeping. I couldn't lie down because when I lie down it would be shortness of breath and hard to breathe. And I always had to sit up. So after about 4 or 5 days of that, I decided to go get it checked. And they said it was pneumonia, but only a touch of pneumonia. So they gave me antibiotics prescription. And they basically sent me home after waiting in the waiting room for like 10 hours. But I went home and I took the pills for 10 days and I still had trouble sleeping until the antibiotics were done with. But they worked and I had no more pneumonia. Fast forward a year later, pretty much 2 days after my birthday, well, the day after my birthday, on January 5th was a Thursday, and that night I had trouble sleeping because I had, shortness of breath, and it reminded me of the pneumonia I had the year before. So I figured, oh, I must be catching that again, except it was on my right side this time before it was on my left. So I thought maybe if we went in Friday morning at like 9 a.m. it wouldn't take 10 hours to get seen. So Eric and I went in, and sure enough, it didn't take as long. It took about 3 hours, I think, 3 to 5 hours maybe. But to do all the testing was really like quicker. So they did the x-ray, they did blood work, and then they finally came back and said, yeah, you have pneumonia. It's pretty serious this time. And it's kind of a weird shape. So instead of just antibiotics and sending me home, they decided to, keep me in the hospital. I actually had to stay there for 2 weeks, which I didn't know at the time. They didn't tell me how long I'd be there for, just a wait and see type thing. They said at least a couple of days, probably. So they started the process where I had to put an IV in one hand so they could administer fluids around the clock. And they also started the antibiotics, so they eventually took me off of the clear fluids, I think after 4 hours, and then they put antibiotics in my IV instead. And so each day I was there for 10 days, I was getting antibiotics put into an IV twice a day, like a full bag that they were hanging there. So that was fun. They also decided to put a catheter in, which was like random, like, hey, maybe you don't pee enough, we should check that. And they kept that in for an entire 11 days. Catheter stuck to my leg and an IV on my arm, so I was pretty much glued to the bed. I don't remember now. So the first couple of days that I was there, I couldn't breathe very well. First week actually, but day one, they had put this little thing on me with it goes in your nostrils and helps you breathe better. So the first day they had that little oxygen mask on, and every time I would take it off to blow my nose or to eat something, they had checking my they were checking it on my finger for my oxygen, and it would go so low. I mean, it went down to 57, and they're like, put that back in your nose. Because they tried to keep my oxygen above 92, and it kept falling, and that was making it hard to breathe. But even with the mask on, I couldn't lie down to sleep, because when I would lie down, it would impact my lungs and my back, so I would start to suffocate. It was just really hard to breathe. And they did scans. They had to do a CT scan where you had to lie on your back to go into this machine, kind of like an MRI. And I remember that they wheeled me in to do that. I'm like, I cannot lie down for this. I can't do this for 2 minutes or however long they wanted. And I had to do it, and I was suffocating, and I was gasping for air, and then I finally got to sit up, and it took a good couple of minutes after sitting up, still gasping for air, thinking I was going to die because I couldn't breathe. It was really hard. And they did x-rays, lots of x-rays for my lungs. And they actually found something wrong with my heart at that time. So they had to do something to help my heart as well. So they were giving me medication for my lungs, medication for my heart now. And I was like, is this going to affect my kidneys? Because my kidneys were low for quite a while. they've been at 17% for a year. They were at 24% last year before I had pneumonia. When they put me on antibiotics, I think that ruined it. I think that's what made it go down to 17%. But they were staying steady for a whole year because my blood sugars were good, so they weren't really ruining my kidneys. And so I didn't want anything to happen. They're like, oh no, this antibiotic is safe for your kidneys and blah, blah, blah. Hopefully. Thank you, Lila. So I trusted them. And of course, a week later, my kidneys went down to 7%. And when you go down to about 8%, they start you on dialysis. So at 7%, they're like, yep, we got to start you on dialysis tomorrow. But, you know, before that, I'm still going to continue with the first week. During the first week, my oxygen was continuing to go down. And so they put me on this other mask. It was like a full mask over your face for like a day to try and be 100%. It was 100% oxygen, they said it was. That didn't really work as well. So then they had to put this other nose mask thing. It's like a wider strip. It's like a black thing that goes, and it pushes a lot of air into your nose. And I remember when you first put it in, there's so much air, you're like, for like a second because it's so strong. And it's really annoying to wear. Couldn't stand that one. It was like harder, not hard to breathe, but I mean, it was like pushing a lot of air in, and it was hard to eat with it. I couldn't taste my food because it blocks your smell because you're just smelling all this air going in. And I don't know, I just hated that mask. But yeah, that's how bad my oxygen got. I had to wear this thing that was basically breathing for me. And then they wanted to check my lungs. So they wanted to make sure there wasn't bleeding in my lungs. So they had to do this, I forget what it's called, but they take a camera and they put it in your nose, down your throat. And I thought, how am I going to have this down my nose? That's going to be really uncomfortable. But they said, no worries. We'll give you something to relax. Just relax. Okay, I was still nervous about having it done. But then they put something in my IV to relax, which apparently was like anesthesia, because if you take enough of it, you pass out, they knock you out. So I thought I was just going to relax, but they were actually trying to make me fall asleep. They just didn't tell me that. So when they wheeled me in to do it, they're like, you know, they put something on my tongue and they put something drip down my nose to make everything numb, and it was kind of like hard to swallow and stuff. And then they're like, that's when they put something in my IV, because they're like, all right, so we're gonna do this in a second. And I'm like, oh no. And then they're like, are you feeling drowsy, or how do you say that? Something like, are you feeling drowsy? And I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, you're a tough cookie, aren't you? And the next thing I knew, I was waking up in recovery. So apparently I felt, and they put more in me in the last second or something. Because I was fine, then I was out like a rock. And then 2 hours later, I was like waking up thinking, what? And it was all over. Like they already did the nose thing. I totally was asleep. Fast forward to when they wanted to actually put me on dialysis and do a kidney biopsy to see what was causing my kidney to go down, though. They said I could also get put on an anesthesia to knock me out the way they did with the nose thing, which I was really wanting. But the thing is that I couldn't have breakfast if I was going to get that. And so they said I couldn't have breakfast on the day of the surgeries. And then they said that my surgeries were going to be postponed to the next day. So they gave me my breakfast and they said, you can eat. So there was like a boiled egg and a slice of toast. So I ate the boiled egg and I was about to chew on the piece of toast, and then a nurse comes in and is like, put that down. And they're like, you can't eat. I'm like, what? And they're like, we've changed our mind. You're having your surgeries in like 5 minutes. And I'm like, but I already ate the egg and I already took a bite of toast. They're like, oh no, now you can only have half the anesthesia. You can't be put to sleep completely. I'm like, oh no, I don't want to go through the dialysis hookup of the thing on my chest and everything awake. But I guess I had to. So I was half awake and drowsy when they did the kidney biopsy. But surprisingly, I didn't even feel anything, so that was good. And then they had to do the chest thing. And this is what they stick on me. I call it sticking, but these are my dialysis wires. They had to cut me open while I was still half awake And I didn't feel much, but I could see what they were doing, sort of, because I'm still legally blind. I couldn't get my cataract surgery done because it was postponed because of all this that was happening again. So, but what I could see and what I could kind of feel is that they put this wire on, and up here is where it's like into my major blood vessel, like it's going into an artery, and it's like in my blood, a major blood artery, couple of, I don't know, maybe an inch or two in there, and then I don't know if they sew it in or what, but they put a bandage over it, and I can still kind of feel that it hurts here. It's been like 13, well, I don't know, a couple of weeks. I mean, this was from January 12th, I think they put this in, and today is like February 13th, so yeah. But this is in like the artery, and then this is just kind of lying, it's like a wire. And then this part is kind of sewn in with sutras, which eventually, I guess tomorrow, the Valentine's Day, they're taking out the sutras. It's now molded into my skin. That's kind of creepy, isn't it? And this part just kind of goes in, and it goes into like a major blood artery to my heart, so that it pumps blood in and out of my body. And they have this little bag, and it's just kind of like hooked into like my skin here, so it's like always attached to me all the time. And I can show you what this looks like here. So basically I go to dialysis now every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Times change all the time. They do take off the bandage every Tuesday and put a new one on, so they put disinfectant stuff all over my skin in that area, and then they let it dry, and they put a new bandage on every Tuesday. So this is a bag to keep it. This is the wires. So you got one wire attached to a line that takes the blood out of me. Every drop of blood gets taken out and gets put into a big machine that filters the blood, and then another line that's going in and connects to this one to bring the blood back in. So I have, blood going out, getting filtered, blood coming in, and it just does all of me. Now the worst part is that I can never ever take this out as long as I'm on dialysis for, there are other options for dialysis where you can have it in your wrist, where you puncture holes every time you go, or I can just have this where it's painless. So I don't know, but they said that I can never get wet. I can't get these wires wet, so I can never take a shower. I can never go to the beach to swim. I can never use my $13,000 hot tub that I got last year. Yeah, so that's annoying. Because I love water. Now I can't get wet. I can take a bath up to my belly button or whatever, and sponge bath everything else, but I can't get this area wet, like not even with a drop of liquid. I don't know. So I'll just leave this off for now, but those are my wires. I feel like I should be connected to like cable TV or something, right? It looks like something I would hook into a back of a VCR. Besides that, I'm doing okay. Now, hospital-wise, I'm on all kinds of medications to help my heart as well. So I already had good blood pressure, and now I'm on blood pressure medication, not to lower blood pressure, but to help my heart, which is lowering my blood pressure. So I get lows at dialysis that are low as like 61/50, and then I start feeling like I'm going to pass out, and so they're going to have to fix that. What else? I can't really say too much about the hospital. I was there for 2 weeks, and I was in 2 different rooms and triage before they brought me into my own private room, and I was in my private room for a couple of days, and then for the last week when I started dialysis on the 12th of January, for that last week I was in a room that was shared with an old man with a curtain between us, but yeah, he snored really loud and I had trouble sleeping. So during the last week of being hospitalized, because I was on prednisone, which I didn't know at the time that was causing this problem, but I had leg pain. It was so severe that 2 nights in a row I wanted to just cut them off or die. And I suffered in pain because I didn't have anything to give me like they gave me Tylenol, and then eventually I need something stronger, and they finally gave me something called Dilaudid. It's like a type of morphine, and I didn't want to be on that, but I couldn't stand the pain. It was the worst pain ever, and I couldn't walk for, God, 2 or 3 weeks. Yeah, it was really tough, and I didn't know what was causing it. I thought it was dialysis at first, and then they assured me it wasn't, and then they did x-rays on my legs, and they used creams, and they tried getting me to walk around, but it was really difficult to walk. My knees were so sore, as if they were broken, or I don't know what was wrong. I just couldn't figure it out. They couldn't figure it out, and they thought it was probably all in my head. But it was the worst pain I had ever felt. And prednisone was some pill that they had to like eventually wean me off of. When they started doing that, my legs were getting better, and like looked up the symptoms and side effects, and they're like, yeah, it causes knee pain and joint pain and hip pain. I'm like, it's got to be the prednisone. So when I was getting weaned off, the last couple of days I couldn't handle. I was just like, I can't do this pill. I threw it out, and 2 days later my legs were back to normal. So yeah, that was just awful. I don't know why they didn't realize that that could have been the reason, but yeah, once I got home, I was completely getting weaned off, and I was still sore for about a week, and I just stopped them. That was enough of that. What else? I don't think I can remember too much else about the hospital. And I think that was enough. Oh yeah, I also had a blood transfusion at some point, because just before, that was before I had the dialysis issues. They said I had low blood, and I needed a blood transfusion, which I never had before. So at one point I had a line, like an IV in one hand, and they said, well, we need to keep you on the antibiotics, so we need to do the blood transfusion in another IV. So they put another IV, and the person who did my IV at first, she said, I don't do good at putting IVs on the top of your hand, so she's going to do it on the side. So she tried that, and it didn't work because my skin's too thick. So like I had to wrap that up with a Band-Aid, and then they tried the top of the hand, and I guess that worked, but it was really hard for her to get that in there. She said I didn't have good veins, and that my hand was too thick to get IVs in, but she eventually got it in, and I did the blood transfusion through my left hand, and I had antibiotics going through my right hand. So at one point I was like tied to a bed with two hands, kind of like not being able to use very well, and then I still had that catheter in my leg, so it was like, you can't go too far. I was pretty much glued to a bed for 2 weeks. And then 2 days later, this one kind of fell out, because my skin just pushes things out. And then like, oh, well, we still need that in case of anything. So like, now we got to do a PICC line. And then, so they did a PICC line on this arm, which went into like this major artery of a thing. I remember being on the table and having to have my arm out like this, and they're like, all right, take a deep breath in when we put the... Anyway, I didn't like that PICC line. It was like 3 wires. Like they had a white wire for in case I needed more like white, like saline fluid. Purple wire was for the antibiotics, and so I switched to this one instead of this one, because this one fell out too. I had no IVs anymore. I just had the PICC line. And then they had the red one in case I needed another blood transfusion, which I only did once, so I didn't really use the PICC line for that. So I had this thing on my arm for the rest of the time I was there. I think it was probably, I don't know, maybe 5 days or more with that in there. Maybe longer, I don't know. It was such a disorienting thing to be there, because I didn't get any sleep. Progesterone, or whatever it was called, not progesterone, prednisone. It also causes insomnia. And with the beginning of my stay, when I couldn't breathe and couldn't sleep, I had to sleep in a chair the first like 4 days that I was there, because I couldn't lie down. And even when I was able to lie down, because I was on that pill, I couldn't sleep. So I really didn't get any sleep during the entire time I was there. I would sleep on and off for 10 minutes until the second last day I was there, when I finally was able to like lie down and sleep for an hour, and then wake up, and then sleep for an hour and wake up, like I was having dreams, so I knew I was sleeping. But yeah, I was really sleep deprived when I left that hospital. I don't know, it was really hard to sleep. And when I finally got the medication, that helped. It helped get rid of my leg pain, and I could finally sleep again. It still took another week to get off of everything and to get back to sleep. So yeah, that was my experience at George Dumont and being on dialysis. That's how I got to this, and But, they said that it could have been maybe it was just the pneumonia and the fact that I was sick that brought my kidneys down, and there's a chance that it could bounce back up again. So when I went on this, I was down to 7%, down from 17 to 7%. And then a couple of weeks, about a week later, they said the dialysis was helping. And then my kidneys are back up to 15 with the help of dialysis. So they did say that I could go down to like only having to go there twice a week instead of 3 times a week. And in a couple of months, there's a chance it could be up enough to actually get off dialysis, at least for a couple of years, and be back to where I was, get rid of this, and go swimming again. So I don't know if I'm going to do the fistula in the arm yet, because that sounds like a permanent thing, and I might not have to do dialysis permanently. So it's a wait and see. Might take 6 months or so, but it's good that they're improving. And then, any hope of getting this off of me is good, because I am tired of going there already. But it's not too bad. I mean, you just lie in bed, right? You just lie there and you just let the blood drain and go back in. And I was really tired when I first started doing them. But after like 4 sessions, now I don't get exhausted when I'm done. But because of the medication they have me on, the blood pressure is terrible because it goes down so low. It's like 61 over 50 even, where I'm like passing out, and I almost passed out. I could have died last time I went, actually. So if they can get me off of that somehow, which I think if they figure out what's wrong with my heart, the left ventricle is thick, and that sometimes happens when you have a lot of built up fluid, which they're removing the fluid through dialysis, so that could help the heart. And then they can get me off blood pressure medications, then I won't have low blood pressures. So the remainder of my time on dialysis could be a lot easier. But for now, I'm just dealing with it one day at a time, I guess. But yeah, that's where I was for 2 weeks, and that's why I'm on dialysis. And I guess that's the end of my video, because I don't have anything else to say about it. Nothing else I can remember anyway. So my throat's getting tired, and I'm thirsty, and I can't drink a whole lot of water. Dialysis only lets you drink 4 glasses a day. And I usually drink like 12, so that's no fun either. Anyway, that's all. Nothing else to say, so bye.